Dr. Sage here. Welcome back to our discussion on the tissue level of organization. In today's lecture, we're going to discuss epithelial tissues. By the end of this lecture, you should be able to explain the structure and function of epithelial tissue. You should be able to distinguish between tight junctions, anchoring junctions, and gap junctions. Distinguish between simple epithelia and stratified epithelia, as well as between squamous, cuboidal, and columnar epithelia. Describe the structure and function of endocrine and exocrine glands and their respective secretions. So most epithelial tissues are essentially large sheets of cells covering all the surfaces of the body exposed to the outside world and lining the outside of organs. Epithelium also forms much of the glandular tissue of the body. Skin is not the only area of the body exposed to the outside. Other areas include the airways, the digestive tract, as well as the urinary and reproductive systems, all of which are lined by epithelium. Hollow organs and body cavities that do not connect to the exterior of the body, which includes blood vessels and serous membranes, are lined by endothelium, which is a type of epithelium. Epithelial cells derive from all three major embryonic layers. The epithelia lining the skin, parts of the mouth and nose, and the anus develops from the ectoderm. Cells lining the airways and most of the digestive system originate in the endoderm. The epithelium that lines vessels in the lymphatic and cardiovascular system derives from the mesoderm and is called an endothelium. So, again, if you're trying to memorize these layers for the ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm, for meso, think middle. Okay, so the one that begins with M, that's the one that's in the middle, just like middle begins with the letter M. Okay, again, to my brain, endo sounds like enter, so that's the inner one. And ecto kind of sounds like exit, so that's the outside one. All epithelia share some important structural and functional features. This tissue is highly cellular, with little or no extracellular material present between cells. Adjoining cells form a specialized intercellular connection between their cell membranes called a cell junction. The epithelial cells exhibit polarity with differences in structure and function between the exposed or apical facing surface of the cell and the basal surface close to the underlying body structures. The basal lamina, a mixture of glycoproteins and collagen, provides an attachment site for your epithelium, separating it from underlying connective tissue. The basal lamina attaches to a reticular lamina, which is secreted by the underlying connective tissue, forming a basement membrane that helps hold it all together. Epithelial tissues are nearly completely avascular. For instance, no blood vessels cross the basement membrane to enter the tissue, and nutrients must come from diffusion or absorption from underlying tissues or the surface. Many epithelial tissues are capable of rapidly replacing damaged and dead cells. Sloughing off of damaged or dead cells is a characteristic of surface epithelium and allows our airways and digestive tracts to rapidly replace damaged cells with new cells. Epithelial tissue provides the body's first line of protection from physical, chemical, and biological wear and tear. The cells of the epithelium act as gatekeepers of the body, controlling permeability and allowing selective transfer of materials across a physical barrier. All substances that enter the body must cross an epithelium. Some epithelia often include structural features that allow the selective transport of molecules and ions across their cell membranes. Many epithelial cells are capable of secretion and release mucus and specific chemical compounds into their apical surfaces. The epithelium of the small intestine releases digestive enzymes, for example. Cells lining the respiratory tract secrete mucus that traps incoming microorganisms and particles. And a glandular epithelium contains many secretory cells. The cells of the epithelia are closely connected and are not separated by intracellular material. Three basic types of connections allow varying degrees of interaction between the cells, this being tight junctions, anchoring junctions, and gap junctions. At one end of the spectrum is the tight junction, which separates the cells into apical and basal compartments. When two adjacent epithelial cells form a tight junction, there is no extracellular space between them, and the movement of substances through the extracellular space between the cells is blocked. This enables the epithelia to act as selective barriers. Okay, so for example, in this figure, this would be the plasma membrane of one cell here. And then this would be the plasma membrane of an adjacent cell here. Okay, and they are sealed together very tightly so nothing can pass like in between these cells, like to go from up here to out down here, for example, in between them. So as an analogy, if you're trying to remember the different types of junctions, what the tight junctions are is your toilet paper. Okay, so go home tonight and start playing with your toilet paper you have at home, because most likely what you have at home is 2-ply toilet paper. What that means is it's 2 sheets of toilet paper closely attached to each other, okay? And if you look at that toilet paper, there will be very likely a quilted pattern on it. And that quilting is what's holding those 2 sheets of toilet paper together very tightly. Okay, so that quilted pattern, those are the tight junctions. And it seals those 2 sheets of toilet paper very tightly, or the 2 cells together very tightly, so nothing can pass in between them. All right, so that's your tight junctions. An anchoring junction includes several types of cell junctions that help stabilize epithelial tissues. Anchoring junctions are common on the lateral and basal surfaces of cells where they provide strong and flexible connections. There are 3 types of anchoring junctions: desmosomes, hemidesmosomes, and adherents. Desmosomes occur in patches on the membranes of cells. The patches are structural proteins on the inner surface of the cell's membrane. The adhesion molecule, cadherin, is embedded in these patches and projects through the cell membrane to link with the cadherin molecules of adjacent cells. These connections are especially important in holding cells together. Hemidesmosomes, which look like half a desmosome, link cells to the extracellular matrix, for example, the basal lamina. While similar in appearance to desmosomes, they include the adhesion proteins called integrins rather than cadherins. Adherens junctions use either cadherins or integrins, depending on whether they are linked to other cells or matrix. The junctions are characterized by the presence of the contractile protein actin located on the cytoplasmic surface of the cell membrane. The actin can connect isolated patches or form a belt-like structure inside the cell. These junctions influence the shape and folding of the epithelial tissue. Okay, so when you're thinking about these, an analogy for these, especially for the desmosomes, what the desmosomes are is the little metal rivets on your blue jeans. So if you're wearing a pair of blue jeans, look at where your hand goes into your pocket, and go ahead and place your hand in your pocket. And what you'll see is your hand can slip in between the sheets of the denim into your pocket. But where the denim of the pocket meets the denim of the pant leg, there's a little metal rivet that holds those 2 pieces together. That's like a desmosome, holding the 2 plasma membranes together. Holds it very tightly at that one little spot, but there's still room for things to slip in between those 2 plasma membranes, or for your hand to slip in between the 2 layers of denim into your pants pocket. In contrast with the tight and anchoring junctions, a gap junction forms an intracellular passageway between the membranes of adjacent cells to facilitate the movement of small molecules and ions between the cytoplasm of adjacent cells. These junctions allow electrical and metabolic coupling of adjacent cells, which coordinates function in large groups of cells. Okay, so what that's saying is small molecules from inside one cell can go ahead and pass through the tunnels of the gap junctions to inside the adjacent or the neighboring cell. And I'm sorry, I don't have a cute little analogy for gap junctions. They're little tunnels through the plasma membranes of adjacent cells. So epithelial tissues are classified according to the shape of the cells and the number of cell layers formed. Cell shapes can be squamous, which is flattened and thin. They can be cuboidal, which is boxy, they're as wide as they are tall, or columnar, which are rectangular, taller than they are wide. The number of cell layers in the tissue can be 1, where every cell rests on the basal lamina. This is called simple epithelium, or more than 1, which is called stratified epithelium, and only the basal layers of cells rest on the basal lamina. You can have pseudostratified, which describes tissues with a single layer of irregularly shaped cells that kind of give the appearance of more than one layer. Transitional describes this form of specialized stratified epithelium in which the shape of the cells can vary. And then you can combine these different categorizations. So you can have squamous, which are the flattened and thin, in either the simple version, 1 cell layer, or the stratified version, multiple cell layers. Cuboidal in the simple version or the stratified version, and columnar in the simple version or the stratified version. The endothelium is the epithelial tissue that lines vessels of the lymphatic and cardiovascular system and is made up of a single layer of squamous cells. So these are used for the air sacs of lungs and the lining of the heart, blood vessels, and lymphatic vessels. It allows materials to pass through by diffusion and filtration and secretes lubricating substances. So simple squamous epithelium, because of the thinness of the cell, is present where rapid passage of chemical compounds is observed. The alveoli of lungs where gases diffuse, segments of kidney tubules, and the lining of capillaries are also made of simple squamous epithelial tissues. The mesothelium is a simple squamous epithelium that forms a surface layer of the serous membrane that lines body cavities and internal organs. Its primary function is to provide a smooth and protective surface. Mesothelial cells are squamous epithelial cells that secrete a fluid that lubricates the mesothelium. In simple cuboidal epithelium, the nucleus of the box-like cells appears round and is generally located near the center of the cell. These epithelia are active in the secretion and absorption of molecules. Simple cuboidal epithelia are observed in the lining of the kidney tubules and in the ducts of glands. In simple columnar epithelium, the nucleus of the tall column-like cells tends to be elongated and located in the basal end of the cells. Like the cuboidal epithelia, the epithelium is active in the absorption and secretion of molecules. Simple columnar epithelium forms the lining of some sections of the digestive system and parts of the female reproductive tract. Ciliated columnar epithelium is composed of simple columnar epithelial cells and cilia on their apical surfaces. These epithelial cells are found in the lining of the fallopian tubes and parts of the respiratory system, where the beating of the cilia helps remove particulate matter. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium is a type of epithelium that appears to be stratified, but instead consists of a single layer of irregularly shaped and differently sized columnar cells. In pseudostratified epithelium, nuclei of neighboring cells appear at different levels rather than clustered in the basal end. The arrangement gives the appearance of stratification, but in fact all the cells are in contact with the basal lamina, although some do not reach the apical surface. Pseudostratified columnar epithelium is found in the respiratory tract, where some of these cells have cilia. A stratified epithelium consists of several stacked layers of cells. This epithelium protects against physical and chemical wear and tear. The stratified epithelium is named by the shape of the most apical layer of cells closest to the free space. Stratified squamous epithelium is the most common type of stratified epithelium in the human body. The apical cells are squamous, whereas the basal layer contains either columnar or cuboidal cells. The top layer may be covered with dead cells filled with keratin. Mammalian skin is an example of this dry, keratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. The lining of the mouth cavity is an example of an unkeratinized, stratified squamous epithelium. Stratified cuboidal epithelium and stratified columnar epithelium can also be found in certain glands and ducts, but are uncommon in the human body. Another kind of stratified epithelium is transitional epithelium, so-called because of the gradual changes in the shapes of the apical cells as the bladder fills with urine. It is found only in the urinary system, specifically the ureters and urinary bladder. When the bladder is empty, the epithelium is convoluted and has cuboidal apical cells with convex, umbrella-shaped apical surfaces. As the bladder fills with urine, this epithelium loses its convolutions and the apical cells transition from cuboidal to squamous. It appears thicker and more multi-layered when the bladder is empty, and more stretched out and less stratified when the bladder is full and distended. A gland is a structure made up of one or more cells modified to synthesize and secrete chemical substances. Most glands consist of groups of epithelial cells. A gland can be classified as an endocrine gland, a ductless gland that releases secretions directly into surrounding tissues and fluids, or an exocrine gland whose secretions lead through a duct that opens directly or indirectly to the external environment. The secretions of the endocrine glands are called hormones. Hormones are released into the interstitial fluid, diffused into the bloodstream, and delivered to targets. In other words, cells have receptors to bind the hormone. The endocrine system is part of a major regulatory system coordinating the regulation and integration of body responses. A few examples of endocrine glands include the anterior pituitary, thymus, adrenal cortex, and gonads. Exocrine glands release their contents through a duct that leads to the epithelial surface. Mucus, sweat, saliva, and breast milk are all examples of secretions from exocrine glands. They are all discharged through tubular ducts. Secretions into the lumen of the gastrointestinal tract, technically outside of the body, are of the exocrine category. Exocrine glands are classified as either unicellular or multicellular. The unicellular glands are scattered single cells, such as goblet cells, found in the mucous membranes of the small and large intestine. The multicellular exocrine glands, known as serous glands, develop from simple epithelium to form a secretory surface that secretes directly into an inner cavity. These glands lie in the internal cavities of the abdomen and chest to release their secretions directly into the cavities. Other multicellular exocrine glands release their contents through a tubular duct. The duct is single in a simple gland, but in compound glands is divided into one or more branches. In tubular glands, the ducts can be straight or coiled, whereas tubes that form pockets are alveolar, such as the exocrine portion of the pancreas. Combinations of tubes and pockets are known as tuboalveolar compound glands. In a branch gland, a duct is connected by more than one secretory group of cells. Exocrine glands can be classified by their mode of secretion and the nature of the substances released, as well as by the structure of the glands and shape of the ducts. Merocrine secretion is the most common type of exocrine secretion. The secretions are enclosed in vesicles that move to the apical surface of the cell, where the contents are released by exocytosis. For example, watery mucus containing the glycoprotein mucin, a lubricant that offers some pathogen protection, is a merocrine secretion. The eccrine glands that produce and secrete sweat are another example. Apocrine secretion accumulates near the apical portion of the cell. That portion of the cell and its secretory contents pinch off from the cell and are released. Apocrine sweat glands in the axillary and genital areas release organic substances that local bacteria break down, and that's what causes body odor. Both merocrine and apocrine glands continue to produce and secrete their contents with little damage caused to the cell because the nucleus and Golgi regions remain intact after secretion. In contrast, the process of holocrine secretion involves a rupture and destruction of the entire gland cell. The cell accumulates its secretory products and releases them only when it bursts. New gland cells differentiate from cells in the surrounding tissues to replace those lost by secretion. The sebaceous glands that produce the oils on the skin and hair are holocrine glands cells. Glands are also named after the products they produce. The serous gland produces watery blood plasma-like secretions rich in enzymes such as alpha amylase, whereas the mucus gland releases watery viscous products rich in the glycoprotein mucin. Both serous and mucus glands are common in the salivary glands of the mouth. Mixed exocrine glands contain both serous and mucus glands and release both types of secretions. This concludes our introduction to epithelial tissues. In the next video, we'll continue our discussion on the tissue level of organization. Until next time, this has been Dr. Sage.